It's tough. Yeah. That's why like the transition to college is going to be like more of a challenge for some than others. The more you can kind of like knock that kind of stuff down like at high school and North Star gives you an opportunity, yeah, the better, because otherwise, I mean, that's college is just full of that. It's full of papers and it's like, okay. All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Have attention, please. All quiet, please. Thank you. So here we are. Go ahead, take out your notes. We're going to be continuing, coming close, I think, to wrapping up this unit as far as your notes are concerned. Okay, we were able to wrap it up going full steam ahead in yesterday, both periods, although they were just slightly, maybe a couple of minutes ahead of you guys on some of the stuff, but no worries. When we come back and we're physically in here on January the 6th, which is a Wednesday, we'll wrap up. Let me finish. We'll wrap up whatever we need to do in here and then do the review. So your test is going to be, you guys, for Green Day, is going to be on Friday the 8th. 80 points, so it's a whopper. Don't keep interrupting. Hang on just a sec. Okay. Right? The test, we'll review for the test. The test will be on Friday, and yeah, so that will be a Google Classroom. I'll be putting out lots of different video things that relate, because we're going to be doing notes on Canada, and usually when we have more time, I'm able to include some video snippets and so forth in and mix it in with the lecture, but I'll go ahead and post that for you, so be watching that. As we've said before, on the Mondays, as the new year starts, not just new, we're not even into the new semester, as the new year, Mondays are going to be like different. You don't actually physically come to school on the Mondays, okay? You guys, Green Day, it's always Wednesday, Friday, okay? Unless there's going to be another change, and who knows? I mean, that's just one of the things you can expect, constantly change. I don't make those decisions, okay? It's already going to be a challenge enough because, in a sense, I'm going to be losing like a half a day each week with you guys. So that's not something that's going to necessarily help me. I think it's an admin decision. Anyway, so in some of the classes, they need more planning, more grading time, and so forth. I mean, that's one of the advantages that I have coming into this year is I know the stuff I teach. All right, so it's not like I have to plan a lot to figure out what is World War I about. I know it, right? So, and my primary method of instruction for you is very old school, is direct instruction. So, it makes it so that I have to shift some things, the video part, more onto at home, okay? And that works to a degree, but the other doesn't necessarily work as well.
So is Monday, is that going to be just regular online?
Yeah.
So we'll have to wake up?
No, not regular online. And I think I mentioned this to you guys before. There's already Ms. Anderson has identified like certain hour groupings and so forth. You can chime in if you wanted to meet with the teacher, if you need to meet with the teacher. I think probably, I don't anticipate that first day there are going to be too many people that want to talk to me, unless they didn't get their IA done. In which case they're probably already communicating with me via email and going, help me, Obi-Wan. You're my only hope. Okay, so you guys ready? So any other questions relating to kind of what's going on? Okay. Throughout the day, I'm getting from you, which is good. I think I got one from everybody here printed out, your IA, okay, which is good. And I know the blue day, they'll be popping in at different points, mostly dropping them off at the office because, yeah, those guys are taking advantage of, let's see, I got to get ready for my exams on Thursday, but Mr. Hansen said I could turn it in on Friday. I'm going to turn it in on Friday. We'll just swing around and drop it off. I'm like, well, don't come around at 9 o'clock in the night on Friday because I'm not going to be here. So, yeah, those guys need to definitely get it in. And I'll be reading that and evaluating that, and then I'll get back to you. Right? I'll get back to you and tell you what the next step is, whether it's we're going to have a meeting early next semester, or you're going to work on it some more and get it back to me, and then have a meeting next semester. Okay? All right. Otherwise, I would say we're in pretty good shape in here. Okay, you guys ready? The IA, yeah.
That's today.
Yeah. I've learned the IA, as was indicated on the handout, and I've indicated all along the way, 100 points, 100 points. I make it worth something because it matters. I want you to do very well. It is not a wise thing for an IB teacher to have it as like just a turn-in check, because then that doesn't really create an incentive for people to do a really good job the first time around. And if you did do a really good job the first time around, you're not going to have as much to do second semester. If you did an okay job, then I'll be telling you, add this, and then you'll really need to make sure it's a really, really good job by the end of next semester. And then you don't have to worry about it senior year, right? Okay, any other questions? All right, let's go ahead and move on with the next thing. Let's stand for the pledge. Okay. Tessa, the pledge. Oh, yes, okay. All right, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Oh my gosh. Are you a treasonous? Are you seditious? All right, here we go. Why did the pitcher get arrested? He was framed. Okay. Snow team. Gabe Hildreth, stock market second place, sponsor of the stock market game, announced him as top placer in fall of 2020. So way to go. Gabe. He's 10th grader. Okay. School. Secondary. I think is there one secondary high school teacher doing the Beglinger? All right, good. She's going to drink it. So anyway, get your money in. Okay, twas the night before Christmas. Wear your PJs to school or anything else, whatever. Yep. So yeah, I wear my PJs at home. And candygrams are going to be delivered 6th period. And snow team, if you didn't sign up already, anyway, they'll let it snow. Hit the slopes. Have a really great break when you are doing that. I don't know, do you have any big assignments over the break? I mean, other than just kind of like getting ready for whatever, like tests, like mine. You got some other class tests? That's good. Yeah, you need that. Okay. You need that. All right, here we go. All right, let's get to this. And this is actually going to be developed. This is Germany after World War I, okay? Germany after World War I. We're going to give you an indication. This is kind of where we have an overlap in this World War I unit, which is going to overlap into the next unit, so you'll be hearing a little bit of repeat here. Did the Germans like the terms of the Versailles Peace Treaty? No, they hated it. I mean, it's very unpopular. And they're going to be, like, complaining with some justification. I mean, they were pretty harsh, but I mean, oh my gosh. Sometimes, have you ever known somebody that, like, you know, they had cause to complain about something, but you're like, oh my gosh, you're taking it to the nth level here. I mean, seriously, oh my gosh. Anyway, so, and some of it is mixed in with some really whack out stuff. Like, for example, there is going to be a small group of people that will say, this is why Germany lost the war. Now, you guys have a pretty good indication why Germany lost the war, right? Okay? So, for example, why, Haley, did the Germans lose the war? What was it, like one of the big things that caused them to like not be able to win it? They were starving, right. Who was responsible for that? Why did Britain do that? I mean, like, when in history of warfare have people ever tried to starve the opponent in order to win? Basically, yeah, like right from the very beginning. We're going to lay siege to your town, and we're going to starve you, and if you try to come out, we're going to kill you, and just to make sure it's really bad, we're going to take rancid, like, disease-infested corpses and throw them over into you. Yeah, they did. Yeah, that's like the original biological warfare. So, but here's the deal. This is a complicated, write it down, okay? Make sure you have this down. Some of you guys have already gotten it in your heads. Did the Germans lose a lot of territory during the course of the war? No. We should keep that in mind, because when we get to World War II, the Allies are going to be like, Germany, you're going to lose this war. We're not going to let you sign off on anything. We're going to, like, conquer you completely. The Soviets were the first troops to get into Berlin, and it was like, yeah, the Germans knew they had completely lost the war. But put this down. There were some in Germany, a small group initially, that said, No. We were stabbed in the back. Our troops were on the front. They were fighting, and it was enemies from within the country, traitors that were selling us out. All right? And who are these traitors? Well, the democratically elected government. They're the one that signed the treaty. And especially political parties on the left, like the socialists. Oh my gosh, the communists. Write that down. There'll be all kinds of complaints that those guys are in there. Oh, and then let's take the old favorite bully punch victim, the Jews. Jews in Germany are behind the thing. It's like, what the heck? Really? If you actually look at the record of Jews who were in Germany during the war, they were right up there with everybody else fighting for the German nation. Right? But anyway, who was pushing this theory, the stab in the back theory? It's going to be Hitler's folks and so forth in the 1920s. It's going to gain traction along with a bunch of other things that we'll look at in the next unit. And so when Hitler comes to power in the 1930s, that's going to be official government policy. And so if you look at treasonous groups of people, and we're not talking about individuals you have to prove, you just say the whole group. And then it's like, oh yeah, sure, fine, yeah, let's get them punished. Shame, shame, shame. This is a very interesting image because the imagery is very, very important. Here you have the German soldier right here, defending against the French and the British, et cetera, et cetera. And here you have the Jew being portrayed here. There's a number of things that are going to be very emblematic in anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic propaganda. You've got the Star of David, okay? So in case anyone didn't know that was a Jew. You've got the large nose. That's going to be also very much in there. And then you've got the sort of effeminate features on a male, okay? To show, this is not a strong masculine figure and so forth. You're like, oh my gosh, am I really looking at this? And it was fascinating because I'm like, and you'll see some of that when you get Hitler in charge and putting out anti-Jewish propaganda as part of his Nazi party and as part of his German government and so forth. You're like, oh my gosh, you just see tons of that. But I was fascinated by the fact that, there's other countries, even some of my favorite childhood authors. I'm like, really? Really? I know, I'm sorry. Roald Dahl, he's from Britain. He writes these great stories, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, like Willy Wonka, right? James and the Giant Peach. And if you're looking for a villain character, right? Because you want to have tension, you want to have a villain. The villain from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is the child snatcher, right? His boss is the king and queen of whatever Eastern European country, and they don't like kids because they make them feel nervous. I don't know, do little children make you feel nervous? Should we round them all up and put them in confinement? Wow. Wow. Okay, so anyway, this guy gets hired, and look at it, the big nose. It fits into long-standing, traditional European hate Jew things. And the idea, it goes way back in the Middle Ages and so forth. What do the Jews do? They round up Christian children when you're not looking and dispose of them in meals and other kinds of things. You're like, what? That sounds like some modern, extreme, fantastical thing that people would throw against their enemies. Oh yeah, I disagree with them politically. Oh, and watch your children. They're going to round them up and eat them.
What?
Yeah. It's just like, what? Where is this coming from? This is so fantastic. And he is like, here it is. I'm going to show you the scene because this is powerful. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is very sweet, right? Dick Van Dyke plays this guy. He's an inventor. His dad's not much of an inventor, but his dad is stolen because they're trying to do some invention and so forth. And so then Dick Van Dyke goes after him with his kids and his new girlfriend who's supposed to be looking after the kids, except that she's going to look after food. Good grief, there's too many things on your plate. I can't do this and that and that. I can't look after your kids while you go look after this. And then so, meanwhile, this guy shows up in town, and he's trying to lure the kids out of hiding. How does he do it? By offering lollipops and ice cream and treacle tarts. Have you had a treacle tart? I think it's very British. I think it's very sweet. Oh, and here's the deal. You don't have to pay for anything, right? Because if the Good Humor truck comes in your neighborhood, you hear the music, and you go freak out, and you're like, there's a bunch of ice cream in their freezer already. You can eat that. But no, you have to run out in the middle of the street and pay money. But this guy is offering all free today. My poor little sister was scarred for life in that movie when that came out. Have you seen it? Right, I'm going to show you the scene. Because he's so creepy, but he's so nice until, boom! boom! He drops it right on top of you. Boom! So, yes, happy thoughts as you go into the Christmas season. Who are you going to let into your house to distribute free gifts? Santa is good.
Stay up all night with a loaded shotgun.
Wow, you feel that way about trespassers. Wow, keep the fire on. He has other ways of getting into your house. We've traced the call. It's coming from inside the house. It's Santa. Yeah, he looks like a sewer clown. Okay, here we go. Oh yeah, this is classic. Yeah. All right, here we go. We'll make it dark so it really has effect on you. And of course, the little children are blonde. Free. Oh, so enticing. Yeah. Do it. Children are so gullible. Yeah, get Truly some. Truly should be truly looking after you, but she's not. Kinda, come back. How many of you guys have ever seen this movie? You have, okay. Oh! Complete transformation. Oh, you terrible babysitter. You should have called Uber Eats. Had them deliver. That is Uber Eats. Oh, no. Anyway, yes. Don't worry, there's a happy ending. Yes, the bad, dark-haired, long-nosed child snatcher is dealt with. Oh my gosh, you're like... It's like, can you have happy, can we have villains that don't that are not steeped deep into anti-Semitic traditions? Oh well, sorry, ruined that one for you. Yeah. So here's the deal. Next thing, and this is actually something that the Germans. This is under the German government in the 1920s. And they have to pay the reparations, right? They have to pay. Part of the Treaty of Versailles is the winners, the Allies, get money from the losers, the Germans in this case. So they have to pay. Are the Germans happy about paying? No. The German government happy about paying? No. So they come up with an idea. They inflate their own currency. Okay? How do you do that? You just print it. You print lots and lots and lots of, in this case, German marks. And I've actually heard this suggested at times when I teach students about the massive national debt that we've accumulated over time, because we spend more than we actually collect in taxes and so forth. So we just spend, accumulated debt. I mean, you guys are probably going to have accumulated debt in your near lifetime. So, but you don't have the ability to just print currency. And so some people say, well, just print currency. You just print currency, right? I mean, I suppose if you did have the real money, you could pay off your $100 debt with pennies. I mean, that's like spite. But what the German government does is, write this down, they just print more German marks. That's the name of the currency. We have the dollar, they have the mark. And normally, the German currency is very, very good, traditionally and so forth. But they print it so much so that what you see right here are bound wads of German marks. And on the face of it, it might be like, some billion marks in like a brick of a paper that is now worthless and is now can be used as like children's play toys.
Well, how much they want to order?
Well, it just kept, here's the deal. Sometimes people paid once a month, sometimes people paid twice a month. Well, in those days, they were being paid twice a day. You would get, if you're going to be paid in marks, you would get the money, put it in a wheelbarrow, drive down to the store, because if you waited too long, your pay would be so worthless, you couldn't buy the stuff that you wanted to at the store. Do you understand that?
So they're forcing people to buy things.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was messing with it ultimately, make sure you write this down, it wrecked their own currency. It messed with their economy. If you had money in the bank, in savings, it became worthless. There was no need, if you had currency, paper, you needed to spend it right away because it was going to lose its value. You guys in your lifetime have lived in inflation where it's about 1 or 2%. Some of you guys notice maybe the gas prices go up quite a bit, like maybe in the summertime and so forth, but mostly it's pretty steady. When I was your age, we were experiencing difficult inflationary times, like 10%. You're like, and that's not good. I mean, it's because it messes with things and, price instability and so forth. They were doing that intentionally in response to the idea that they had to pay the British and the French and others, and they weren't really excited about that. It does destabilize, and in fact, literally, it's kind of like it messes with your currency and economy so much so that you're like, don't give me the paper anymore. Don't give me the paper. Give me something that's going to hold value. What do you call that when your economy shifts from doing paper to something that actually is much more like holding value? What kind of economy is that? Do you guys know that? One class they didn't know it, they didn't get it right away. The other class somebody chimed in right away. Barter economy, write that down. A barter economy. Don't pay me in paper, pay me in something that's going to hold value. Give me a tire. Okay? Because I know a tire is still a tire and it's still as valuable as it was yesterday and so forth because there's value in the tire. I need to go get some food. I'm going to go to the store, I'm going to take my tire, I'm going to exchange the tire for food. It's not a very efficient way of doing things, but at least the value holds. Sometimes like when you see, like during people are like, oh my gosh, we're going to go into crazy economic times, inflation's going to be really rampant, buy gold. Gold always has value. Paper might not have as much value over time, but gold and silver and stuff.
You do the same thing with items.
Okay? Yeah, I mean, so anyway, so there you go. That was in the 1920s, and so this is before Hitler comes along. There'll be another thing that's going to take place in the 1920s. This is from 1923 to 1925. You ready? The British and the French are like getting frustrated because it's like, we're getting this worthless paper to pay off these debts. That's ridiculous. So they're like, we're going to go ahead and make sure. The French, write this down, the French are really insistent. And they have a right under the terms of the treaty. If the Germans do not comply, they have a right to send in their military and government workers. Okay? But here's the thing. Where they send them, and let's back it up here a little bit so we can get a map. Here we go. Where they send them is this region right in here. It's an industrial region, write it down. It's called the Ruhr, R-U-H-R. It's an industrial region, lots of factories and so forth. So the French are like, you know what? We're going to get the value of what the Germans are actually producing instead of this worthless paper stuff. So they go in and they occupy the Ruhr. Why? Well, they're going to take the value that is produced by the factories. Oh, there you go. So then they're going to be able to get the stuff there. You see that working out really well? Can you think of what the Germans, were the Germans like that? No. What could the Germans do to resist that? They're not going to fight with like weapons and so forth. But if you're a German worker and now the French are coming in and you're working, you're getting your wages and so forth, but the value of the work, a lot of that's going to go directly to the French. You could go on strike, you could slow down, you can do all kinds of stuff. And then that happens. From 1923 to 1925, the French are like, oh my gosh, we're like trying to get some value out of these Germans, and the Germans are like, I analogize it to the little toddler. Have you ever been around a little toddler? Maybe you were one of these little toddlers. They're told to go somewhere, and they don't. And then you try and like take them by the hand, and what do? boom, they flop down on the ground. And if they're small enough and you're big enough, you pick them up and you cart them off. Otherwise, I don't know, you guys could probably get away with that. Have you tried that lately when you didn't want to do something your parents didn't want you to do? You go, and you just sort of flop down to the ground. And they're like, oh, you're getting so big. That works every time. Well, think of the Ruhr, the German workers, 1923 to 1925. That's what they did. And the French just threw their hands up and said, okay, forget it. We're out of here. Write that down. It didn't work. It didn't work for the French. Make a note. It'll be the last time that the French will follow through and actually send in their people into Germany when Germany doesn't comply. Right? And so Hitler knows this. When Hitler ultimately comes in the 1930s, he's like, well, we're not going to do this, and we didn't do this, but don't worry, it's not like we're going to start a war. We're violating these terms of the Versailles Peace Treaty, but don't worry, we're going to start a war. Are you going to go in, France? When the Germans actually send their military right up to the French border, are you going to come in, France? They don't. Okay? Anyway, mind games, all these different kinds of things. What are you going to do to your child if they have a tantrum and go flop? Wow. Whoa! He holds the fists up. Call health and welfare. They're coming around. You can't use fisticuffs. I don't know. I mean, it's like, what are the kinds of tools that you have and so forth? I mean, it's, I'll let you guys figure that out, okay? But needless to say, when the French tried to do it with the Germans and so forth, and the Germans, and constantly they're saying that the Versailles Peace Treaty is not fair, it's not fair, it's not fair, and it's not fair, it's not fair, it's not fair. It's not fair. Canada. All right, here we go, Canada. All right. On your handout, this would be at the very bottom of page 2. Okay? So turn to the bottom of page 2. We follow a consistent theme here as we look at the Americas. All these different paper 3 units. Spend a lot of time talking about the United States of America. But like when we talk about World War I or the pre-war years or World War II or the Cold War, we always kind of chime in on 3. Canada, Mexico, and Brazil. Those are going to be the big ones there. To look and see kind of like what's going on with those guys. Okay, and they're all going to be somewhat different. Canada, our only sort of like northern neighbor there. Write this down. You ready? Canada. They are going to be in the war right from the get-go. Okay? Canada is going to be in the war right from the get-go. World War I, yep. And this is, and let's explain some things here. You need to understand that. There's your prime minister, Robert Borden is going to be the prime minister, I think, throughout the entire thing, if not most of it. So you got a leader, so you'll need to know Robert Borden. And one of the things you're going to discover about Canada is it's kind of in this transition. What are they? Are they an independent country? Not quite, not fully. Their title is, you ready? A dominion within the British Commonwealth of Nations. A dominion. They have dominion status. Well, what's that? Well, it's better than being an outright colony, that's for gosh darn sure. Because in the British Empire, they've got some colonies, and who's running those colonies? Britain is running those colonies. All right? Some of you guys may recall, like from 9th grade when we talked about Canada. I mean, the United States tried to, come on, Canada, be part of the American Revolution. That didn't work out. And then we tried to take them over in the War of 1812. How'd that go? That didn't work out. And so then there's sort of like this friendly rivalry thing that sort of develops between the United States and Canada. We get along really well with Canada, but, I mean, we have the same parents. I suppose we're the older child, but we're the one that had a big blowout with the parents and, like, slammed the door and left. We're independent. And Canada maintains a better relationship along the way, but America was looking and go, you're a mama's boy. Yeah, and you're like, no, we're not. We're in charge, Canada gains more control over their own affairs. But put this down. Canada did not have full control over foreign affairs. So when Canada declared war in World War I, it was actually Britain that was declaring war on behalf of Canada. So it makes it a little bit more complicated, doesn't it? Because who's going to have to, like, send the people over? Who's going to be actually dying on behalf of Canada's declaration of war effort? Canadians, yeah, Canadians. So notice this, make a note of this. Canada's identity of itself is going to grow. I'll say it another way. Canadian nationalism is going to grow during World War I. There will be plenty of more people that are going to go, Canada, Canada, Canada. We should be a real independent country today. Does Canada have any official ties to Britain? Anything left? Because there's going to be some big changes over the last 100 years. The only official tie that they have, where the British still have some connection there, is the head of state. Who's the head of state of Britain? Is also the head of state of Canada, the Queen. And how much power does the Queen have over Canadian affairs? Nothing, really. But they like her. Yeah. She's a nice lady. Don't be saying that. What's that? Oh, no. You need to remember, Quebec had been French. Still a lot of French speakers there. They lost it to the British in the French and Indian War, also known as the 7 Years' War. This was the war that took place before the American Revolution, where the British and the French were fighting over control of North America. And who won? The British, with the help of colonists like George Washington. And then who was going to pay the tax bill for the war? And we didn't like that, so we declared independence, et cetera, et cetera. So, but this is a very good point, and this is going to come up. Canada is an interesting thing. It's mostly British, although you have other immigrants and so forth from other places, German-speaking countries and so forth. And you've got that residual group of people in Quebec that are French, French Canadians, okay? French-speaking, I should say. All right, put this down. One of the things that you're going to see, though, is Canada is going to try to maintain as much independence in their war effort. So, for example, write this down. Separate Canadian military units. You're like, well, aren't they all separate, like, units and so forth, run by their own people? Not so much. A lot of the other British colonial units are going to be officered, and, you know, generals in charge. Those are going to be British generals in charge of those units, okay? The Canadians insist, and they get Canadian generals in charge of those units. By the way, where are they going to be doing most of their fighting? What part of the war? The war is not taking place in North America. Yeah, the Western Front, okay? The Western Front. So they'll be tucked in there right in, like usually next to like British units and so forth, and there'll be coordination and so forth. But there'll actually be some efforts that are going to be primarily done by the Canadian troops. In fact, let's go ahead and identify those right now. Where'd I have that? Here we go. Two battles in particular are going to be very well known among Canadians. If you go to Canada and go, yeah, World War I, they'll go Passchendaele, Vimy Ridge. 1917 for both of them. Okay? Passchendaele, Vimy. I mean, they're going to be involved in others, like the Battle of the Somme, which the British were primarily involved in. But these ones in particular are going to be very, very heartfelt for the Canadians. 1917, and at Vimy Ridge, actually, the Canadians look and they pay a high price, as you can imagine, fighting an offensive on the Western Front, because you're going to be going right into the face of machine gun fire, sniper fire, and so forth. And yet, the Canadians will look and take great pride because they planned it out about as well as you can, and they gained some ground. In the measure of Western Front offenses, that was considered a success. I mean, it's not like they're going to push the Germans all the way back, but they gained some ground, again, at a very high cost. So they feel like they've got their money in the game, they've got their blood in the game, they got their people in the game. In fact, here's a detail. You ready? Write this down. 420,000 Canadians are sent to fight. Many of them are in the military as a result of the draft. There's only so many people that are going to volunteer. And I mean, this was the case in all the countries. After a while, your volunteers started to kind of dry out a little bit, but we still needed men, so they're going to be sent to fight. I mean, and this is a population that's only got, 7.2 million people in it altogether? It's a lot of people. Write it down. 66,000 dead, give or take. This is more than the number of dead for the United States, which is a much, much bigger country. Can anyone explain that? It's not that hard. Exactly. They were fighting in 1914, 1915, 1916, 1917, 1918. When did the United States start fighting? 1917, yeah. I mean, we declared war, and it wasn't until the latter part of 1917 that we actually got a significant number of troops over there into the fight. Okay? So we got, those are going to be very, very important. As far as the draft, let's go ahead and identify this. And this goes right on what Sammy was talking about. In fact, I'll ask you, Sammy. The draft is, of course, of all throughout Canada. All right? Men are conscripted all throughout Canada. Which region within Canada is not as excited about going to war on behalf of English-speaking Canada and English-speaking England? Quebec, exactly. Write that down. Quebec, there's going to be more draft resistance there. And of course, some people might say, hey, come on, France is being invaded. You know, you fellow French-speaking people and so forth. And they're like, yeah, well, we haven't been part of France since the 1700s. So there was more resistance there, okay? So they'll have separate units. Oh, when they get to the Paris Peace Conference, they'll have a separate delegation, separate from the British and the French and the Americans and so forth. Okay, so that's a very important point. Let's see. They're going to be involved in the air war. There are going to be some Canadian pilots involved in that as well. The Canadian Navy is going to be very significant, particularly in helping to, with the convoys, with the ships going across from Canada over and across the Atlantic over to Britain and France. Okay? Total war effort. Lots of factories, munitions, and so forth. I mean, the workers are like, work, 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 work. And so some of the workers are like, this isn't really good. At the end of the war, write this down. You can see in your notes, Winnipeg, there's going to be a big strike in 1919. A big strike. Workers are going, the war is over. We need better benefits, better pay, and so forth. So we'll go on strike. The Canadian government's going to start freaking out. They're like, oh my gosh, workers are on strike. Is this like communism? Well, because communism is taking place over there in Russia and so forth, so there's this feeling like, oh my gosh, are these workers become radicalized? Are they going to like dump democracy and capitalism and so forth and exchange it for some kind of like a workers' state dictatorship thingy that's going on in the Soviet Union? Turns out, no. Ultimately, in the United States, Canada, and so forth, workers are predominantly going to work through the democratic process, right? Try and get laws changed that provide for better benefits and better protection for workers. Okay, that's going to be a big difference as opposed to an all-out boom revolution that you see in places like Russia. Okay, women, we've seen this before. Women, great sacrifice. What are the women doing in the war? Working in the factories. And just a reminder, and I don't think I emphasize this as much with the British and the French and the United States. It's going to be the same with Canada. Women work, work, work. What do they earn? At the end of the war, what can they come to the government and say? We worked. We helped win this one. We want more than just money. They want what? Exactly, write it down. Suffrage. They want the right to vote. And they're going to be getting the right to vote in all of those countries shortly after the war. It's very fascinating that it kind of comes in. Canada, Britain, how long have we had the 19th Amendment, the right to vote, regardless of gender? Just like 100 years in this country. And World War I had a lot to do with it. Women contributed a big way in the effort to win. Okay? Look at all the different things and so forth and so on and so on. Oh, yep, let's talk about this. Halifax. There's other consequences of war that sometimes are really, really, really bad. Halifax is an excellent example. Halifax, 1917, December 7th. Wow. That's the same day that will live in infamy in 1941 in Pearl Harbor. It was a bad day in Canada. Halifax is in Nova Scotia. It's a very important port city in Canada. It is a gathering point during the war for ships. Lots of ships coming from various different places, gathering together, joining up with a convoy, and then heading across the Atlantic Ocean. The danger is, and of course on some of those ships you have, regular supplies and so forth. Some of those ships you have munitions, and some of those ships you have like explosives. There was one particular ship that was full of explosives, and it was a very bad day that day. Okay? Because if you got this, and so forth going on, it's like go, 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 go. I don't know. Which side of the road do you drive on in the United States of America? Middle. You're a danger. We're the right side. What about the Canadians? The Canadians, do they drive on the left or right? What about the British? Left. Okay. What about if you're in like a channel, like right here, a water channel, and you got like, I don't know, you think you got several lanes, and you're like going this way, and the other ship's coming that way. Which way do you go? Do you go to the right? Do you go to the left? Or do you just sort of go, I'm bigger than you, and play a game of like water chicken or something? It was a very bad day because there were two ships that crashed into each other. One of them was a French ship, I believe, and it was full of explosives. It caught fire on the deck, and it starts heading toward the dock. And of course, this fire on the ship is attracting all kinds of like Sunday, Canadians and so forth. They're looking and going, wow, there's a fire. And then they see these guys jump off the ship and swim to the shore, and they're continuing running up the side of the hill because they're trying to get away from the ship that they just were on because they know that the ship that they were on is full of explosives, and eventually it will explode. It's the biggest explosion, man-made explosion in history until the nuclear bombs are dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It happened in a waterway. It obliterated large parts of Halifax, Canada. There were 2,000 people killed, many more wounded, maimed. Civilian population. 2,000. Yeah, there's an image of it, and I'm going to post the link for the video when we have more time. We have that, but you can watch that. You can watch that. I mean, it's terrible. The cost of war is not just borne by the soldiers who are actually in the battlefield. Sometimes when things are so chaotic, and you're like, war, we got the effort. I mean, where else is it? Is it safe to work in a factory? I mean, you got munitions and so forth. Even if like things are going normal, it's like, yeah, you got like, why are your face so yellow? Because you're breathing in all this, Ugh. So Canada, big deal. Canada played a very, very big part of the war. One of the great Canadians is going to be John McCrae, who wrote a poem. We have all these different soldiers who wrote poems. This is one of the most famous ones. My dad put this to heart. It really kind of tugged. He was of a generation that went to war and survived. And so this is sort of like emblematic of men who go to war and survive. They hear this poem. Here we go. In Flanders fields, the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row, where the cemeteries are of all the soldiers who were killed, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks still bravely sing, fly scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields. And in northern France and Belgium, you have just naturally growing masses and masses of these red poppies. And in fact, there you go. There's the reminder. When the British were commemorating World War I, they put these ceramic poppies. And you'll see poppies being worn by people in commemoration on Armistice Day, what is our Veterans Day. So, very powerful that way. Mexico, very brief. Mexico stays neutral throughout the entire war. Very smart. Here is their president, Anastasio Carranza. In the midst of the Mexican Revolution, they're like, let's stay out of the war. Who tries to talk him into joining their side? Germany, yeah. And Mexico's like, no, we're not going to go against the United States of America. That would be a train wreck. Does Mexico actually benefit from trade? They do. Write it down. They sell a lot of oil. And ironically, who are they able to sell it to? The Middle East. No, the British and the French. Would they like to sell it to the Germans? Sure, but what's the problem? The blockade. There we go. And so actually, ironically, you're going to have Mexican ships, neutral ships, ultimately are going to be subject to the same kind of U-boat sinking that's going to be going on there. But Mexico maintains its neutrality throughout the entire war. Okay? Yep. Oh, by the way, did I mention what happened to, back it up a little bit. In Canada, there were a lot of German speakers who had immigrated there, just like in the United States. Are they going to be rounded up and stuck into camps and killed like Armenians? No, but there is, write this down, there is going to be a lot of sort of anti-German stuff going on, like high schools will cancel German classes. You will learn French this year. Spanish, perhaps, but not German, nicht. But I mean, at least we weren't I mean, it's like the United States is never going to round up people from one particular national group and stick them in confinement, like in the desert in Idaho. Yeah, that's World War II. I mean, so next time we have a very brief thing to do as far as Brazil. They'll be neutral, and then they're going to join on the side of the Allies toward the end of the war. But we can knock that down in probably about 2, 3, 4 minutes to wrap it up next time. Okay? Good. So very good. All right. We are done. Wipe her down.